Part 1. The grand reveal explained in 700 words. The galaxy had lived in relative peace for nearly a century. Held in fragile balance by the influence of various coalitions, trade unions, and the dominant Galactic Council. Among the elder species like the Vortari, Sulari, and Keltha, named the Eternal Empire was something spoken in hushed tones. To younger civilizations, it was a myth, an exaggeration from history books, inflated by paranoia and poor record-keeping. No sightings had occurred. In over 200 years, some believed they had vanished. Others suspected they never existed at all. Humanity, having only joined the galactic stage 2 decades ago, regarded the rumors with skepticism. Earth's scientists found no evidence of such an empire's reach, and Terran historians chalked it up to political propaganda used by the Council to keep its member worlds compliant. If the Empire ever did exist, most human scholars reasoned, it had likely imploded under the weight of its own arrogance. They were wrong, just not in the way they expected, without warning. A violent fracture appeared on the edge of Sector 92, a quiet region filled with Lorosaurus planets and scattered mining colonies. The rift widened like a wound in space itself, and from its depths emerged a fleet. Not a single ship, not a scout vessel, but hundreds, came in waves, each one more ostentatious than the last. Hulls of gold and crimson, bristling with ancient weaponry and lined with rows of symbols that glowed with ceremonial energy fields. They moved in tight. Practiced formations that had clearly been rehearsed for theatrical effect. All across the galaxy, emergency broadcasts triggered. The signals contained a unified message on every channel and frequency. Kneel before the Eternal Empire. The transmission included a dramatic score composed of deep orchestral tones and rising horns, matched with visual footage of past conquests, worlds falling, alien races bound in chains. The climax featured the Empire's ruler, Emperor Cathal IX, standing atop a crystalline podium, clad in ornate robes that shimmered unnaturally. Behind him loomed towering warriors with spears of molten light and rigid faces hidden behind decorative, outdated battle helms. The Galactic Council went into full emergency session. Panic spread rapidly through the core worlds. Some species immediately began evacuating key cities. Others debated unconditional surrender. But when the broadcast reached Earth, the human reaction was different. On Europa Station, the Terran Assembly, humanity's interstellar diplomatic body, had gathered to assess the broadcast. Ambassador Marie Juno, a shrewd woman known for her blunt demeanor and dry wit, stood before the council display, watching the dramatic montage. At first, there was silence. Then someone snorted, another chuckled. By the time Emperor Cathal pointed his jeweled scepter at the screen and declared, "Your servitude will be your salvation," the room had dissolved into full-blown laughter. Marie Juno wiped tears from her eyes as she turned to the camera that had been recording the assembly. "Is this a trailer? Are they seriously trying to intimidate us with a music video?" The laughter echoed throughout the room, and within hours, across Earth's networks. Memes flooded the net, clips of the Emperor's exaggerated declarations, layered over comedic Earth music, reaction videos of soldiers watching the broadcast and bursting into laughter. Even mock recruitment ads to join Theater Division, now hiring drama coaches for the Eternal Empire. But beyond the mockery, Earth's leaders understood something crucial. This wasn't just pageantry. The Empire was real, and it had returned. What struck humanity wasn't the threat the Empire posed, but how utterly out of touch the Empire was. Everything about them reeked of ancient arrogance and entity frozen in time, still convinced that galactic dominance could be won with a parade of outdated relics and over-the-top speeches. To the Empire, awe equaled submission. To humanity, it looked like a poorly funded sci-fi drama, yet beneath the humor. Earth's military quietly activated defense protocols. Strategic fleets were placed on alert. Analysts were assigned to study the approaching ships. Intelligence officers began reviewing old records and mythologies for anything that could reveal the Empire's actual capabilities. Because while Earth laughed on the surface, they knew one thing very well: clowns can still carry knives. And if the Empire mistook laughter for weakness, they were about to learn the hard way what humans did after they finished laughing. They fought. Part 2. Pageantry and Paper Swords, explained in 700 words after the galaxy-wide announcement of the Eternal Empire's return. The panic among various species was palpable. Fear of annihilation ran high, at least among the older civilizations, who remembered the legends of the Empire's brutality. But Earth had moved past the laughter. Now they were analyzing. The scene shifts to the bridge of the Terran Federation flagship, the Resolute Vow, a sleek, modern battleship orbiting Neptune. Captain Dominic Hayes stood at the center, arms crossed, gazing at a 3D projection of the incoming Empire fleet. It looked impressive on the surface. The ships glistened in golden hues and were arranged in perfect ceremonial formation. There were banners suspended between capital ships, glowing symbols pulsing with artificial gravimetric light shows. But 2 trained Terran military analysts. It was immediately obvious. This fleet was not built for war. It was built for spectacle. Lieutenant Alvarez, overseeing sensor scans, broke the silence. They're using fusion coils the size of our hangars and getting half the output. Plasma arrays are charging at 23% efficiency. Their armor decorative. They've engraved their shielding. Hayes scoffed. We've built better destroyers out of recycled lunar scrap. It became clear the Eternal Empire hadn't evolved with the times. Her technology, though once terrifying, had stagnated. Where the rest of the galaxy advanced in AI integration, nanite repair systems, and energy conversion, the Empire doubled down on ceremony and intimidation. Their idea of war was built on symbols and illusions, like a magician clinging to outdated tricks long after the audience grew wise. Meanwhile, the Empire wasn't idle. They continued broadcasting elaborate demands to planetary governments. Across various colonies and neutral worlds, species began receiving declarations of imminent restructuring and requests for immediate tribute delivery. Many civilizations, gripped by fear, began caving. Small worlds pledged allegiance. Trade unions halted operations to avoid being labeled non-compliant. Imperial diplomacy, if it could be called that, relied solely on intimidation and theatrics. Then they sent an envoy to Earth. The Imperial cruiser Light of Legacy descended into Earth's orbit, docking at a secured facility above Geneva. Diplomatic detachment was greeted by a human reception committee in simple military uniforms, no fanfare. No decoration, just efficiency. The contrast was immediate. The Empire's envoy was a tall, bird-like alien named Zarbonth Toll, wearing flowing silks, dozens of layered metals, and an absurdly tall feathered headdress that swayed with every step. Behind him marched 10 ceremonial guards armed with crystalline halberds that glowed faintly more like parade props than real weapons. The Terrans led them into the United Nations. Grand Assembly Hall, still used for diplomatic formality, but mostly retired for galactic affairs. The room was minimalist. No glowing banners, no ceremonial music. Just a round table, modest seating, and a few cameras. Zarbonth stood proudly and opened with a speech that lasted 7 whole minutes. He declared the dawn of a new age, the restoration of the Empire's divine order, and Earth's glorious future under its benevolent guidance. He concluded by unfurling a scroll. Yes, a literal scroll listing the demands. Transfer of Earth's orbital fleets to Imperial Command monthly. Tributes of refined minerals and military personnel, suspension of independent space programs. A personal audience with the Terran High Chancellor to pledge loyalty when he finished. The room was dead silent. Then Ambassador Marie Juno stood. She calmly walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and said just one word: no. She turned and walked away. At first, the Empire's envoy was confused. He waited for an explanation. When none came, he sputtered, flailed his arms, and repeated the list of demands. The humans didn't even argue. They simply thanked him for visiting and escorted him back to his shuttle. The moment was captured on every Earth channel and shared across thousands of human and alien networks. The simplicity of it, the single-syllable denial, became a meme. One still image of Ambassador Juno smirking at the scroll was captioned, "You forgot who we are." The human response sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Species that had begun to surrender paused, confused. Was the Empire not all-powerful after all? For Terran leadership, the decision wasn't emotionally, was logical. The Empire had revealed its strategy, and it was built on paper swords. All show, no substance. But Earth also understood the game wasn't over. The Empire had been humiliated, and humiliation bred retaliation. That's why the Terran fleets began quiet preparations. Docks activated long-range defense protocols. Recon drones were deployed beyond Jupiter, and Earth's greatest battleships were brought online because humanity wasn't laughing instead of fighting. They were laughing before the fight began. Part 3. The Empire's mistake explained in 700 words. Humans had laughed when the Empire revealed itself. But that didn't mean they underestimated it. Humor was Earth's pressure valve, how they handled absurdity, fear, even war. Behind the laughter was preparation. When the Empire retaliated, humanity was ready. After the diplomatic disaster on Earth, Emperor Catholix was livid. Reports of humans mocking his declarations, reposting memes of his fleet, and referring to the Empire as cosplayers with starships reached the imperial high throne. His advisors urged caution. His generals whispered about Earth's reputation, how quickly they'd risen, how quietly they'd developed fleets without fanfare, how they'd once turned an entire moon into a kinetic defense platform just to test a theory. But Cathal didn't believe the reports. To him, humanity was young, irreverent, and disrespectful. And worst of all, they didn't fear him. That was intolerable. So he made the mistake. He ordered an exemplary correction. Expect wary of Eartha, small, punitive expedition meant to remind the galaxy of the Empire's power. He did not send the Empire's full force. Instead, he dispatched a task force of 73 ships, a mix of heavy cruisers, patrol vessels, and ornate capital ships. It was not a war fleet, but a show of force, flashy and arrogant. Much like the Empire itself, their target, the Sol system, their orders, breach Sol space, approach Earth orbit, and demand unconditional surrender. If denied, bombard key installations, and cripple orbital infrastructure. The humans didn't flinch. At the Resolute Vows Bridge, Captain Dominic Hayes reviewed the incoming data. The fleet's trajectory was clear. They were heading straight for the Sol Gate, an ancient, repurposed jump node orbiting Pluto. Human defense protocols were triggered but not escalated. Hayes didn't want to start a war, but he would finish one. He transmitted a simple message to the approaching Imperial fleet. "Turn around. You're not ready for this." The message was ignored. From the Empire's point of view, they believed they were facing an inferior foe. What they didn't understand was that Earth had spent the past 20 years studying everyone. While the galaxy squabbled over resource rights and protocols, humans reverse-engineered alien tech, hybridized propulsion systems, and developed weapons that weren't designed for intimidation, but for overwhelming functionality. The Terran fleet sent to intercept the Empire wasn't large, only 5 ships, but they were flagships of an entirely different era. Each one housed advanced targeting AI, kinetic weaponry that used mass-warping accelerators, and shielding based not on brute force, but on quantum phase disruptions. To the Empire's commanders, 5 ships looked like a mistake. They didn't know it was a test. The Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace near Pluto, forming up in dazzling formation, banners deployed. They broadcast a final warning to Earth. No response then. From the darkness, the TSV Artemis powered up its main weapon, the spinal-mounted plasma lance designed to pierce asteroids. The first shot fired was silent in the vacuum of space, but its effect was thunderous. The plasma bolt traveled faster than the Empire's sensors could track. One of their cruisers was bisected mid-transmission. Just a clean, glowing gash and then silence. Panic spread instantly. The Empire returned fire, launching salvos of torpedoes and plasma bolts. Dozens of missiles arced toward the Terran ships, but none landed. Earth's defense AI, nicknamed Hera, coordinated the fleet's response with chilling precision. Point defense lasers lanced out and tore the projectiles to shreds before they reached effective range. The humans didn't taunt. They didn't speak. They simply moved. The Resolute Vow released a barrage of gravitic slug-solid metal rounds, accelerated using compressed microsingularities. The kinetic impacts shattered to more Empire ships. The Ravager of Dawn, an Imperial dreadnought, attempted evasive maneuvers, was caught in a pincer strike and detonated as its overloaded core went critical. The battle lasted 12 minutes. 69 of the 73 Empire ships were destroyed or disabled. The 4 survivors fled without orders, broadcasting distress calls and warnings to their command centers. One message, recovered later by Earth's intelligence network, simply read, "We thought they were primitive. They're monsters." Back aboard the Resolute Vow, Hayes issued no pursuit. Instead, he had his comms officer compile the entire battle footage, edit it for clarity, and then send it directly to the Galactic Council. In the closing seconds of the footage, Hayes added a message to the camera. Empire revealed. Joke received. Try again next time. The file went viral. Galactic channels went silent. Worlds that had begun caving to the Empire's threats paused. Some began to resist. Species who had feared the Empire for centuries watched in awe as 73 ships fell to 5. The mistake the Empire made wasn't attacking Earth. The mistake was assuming humans were laughing because they were weak. They never imagined. The laughter was simply the calm before the storm. Part 4. The shortest war in galactic history explained in 700 words. The Empire had just experienced its first real military defeat in over 3 centuries, and it hadn't simply lost, it had been humiliated. The once feared eternal empires. Fleet, 73 ships strong, had been obliterated by 5 Terran vessels in a 12-minute engagement near Pluto. The galaxy was still reeling from the footage Earth had distributed. Gleaming Imperial cruisers reduced to wreckage, ceremonial dreadnoughts torn apart like paper in the wind, and humans offering no war, cry only silence and precision. But while the rest of the galaxy watched in stunned silence, the Empire reacted with fury. Back in the capital system of Volterac, Prime Emperor Cathel Ix was livid. He ordered a declaration of total war on Earth and authorized a full military mobilization. Tens of thousands of Imperial ships were to be called from reserve fleets scattered across the core systems. Old war factories were reactivated. Recruitment drives began. Planetary governors were commanded to conscript and contribute. But there was a problem. The Empire hadn't fought a real war in centuries. What they had were relics glorious on the outside, hollow inside. Ships that needed entire crews just to activate shields. Troops trained more in formation drills than actual combat. Logistics that ran on outdated warplanes, long since abandoned by modern civilizations. Their preparations, by human standards, were sluggish, archaic, and filled with bureaucracy. Humanity didn't wait. Terran intelligence, monitoring deep space. Communications intercepted the Empire's war declaration before it even left their central relay hubs. Earth's response wasn't words, it was movement in the span of 48 hours. 3 full Terran battlegroups departed from hidden bases around Saturn, Mars, and the Kuiper Belt. They didn't head for Valtorok Prime directly. It would have been too obvious. Instead, they spread out, hitting communication relays, orbital shipyards, hyperspace choke points. And everywhere they struck, the results were the same. One-sided obliteration. On Duran Station, an Imperial outpost with a population of 3 million human ships, decloaked and disabled every defense platform in under 11 seconds. They then broadcast a message to the station's command tower. This is not a conquest. This is a warning. Leave the Empire while you still can. The message was followed by humanitarian drops food, medical supplies, and secure comms channels for surrendering units. Terran Marines stepped onto platforms not as conquerors, but as liberators. The Empire's soldiers, long disillusioned, surrendered without resistance, and even joined the effort to remove their own corrupt officials. Within a week, 10 more. Systems fell not to violence but to defection. The message was clear. Earth wasn't trying to replace the Empire. It was simply dismantling it. By the second week of the conflict, over half of the Empire's outer territories had broken away or declared neutrality. Imperial governors turned off their communication systems, fearing they'd be next, even loyalists. Commanders began refusing deployment orders, citing technical malfunctions or fuel shortages. Inside the Terran Command Center, code name Aegis Deep, facility buried under the Antarctic ice, Ambassador Marie Juno reviewed a live feed of intercepted Imperial broadcasts. Her expression was unreadable as reports of panicking nobles, confused soldiers, and mass desertions flashed by. Shortest war in galactic history. Commander Eli Jong muttered beside her. Juno raised an eyebrow. Has it even been declared? Yet, Jong shrugged. Technically, no. They're still debating the wording. And that was the core of Earth's victory, speed and clarity. While the Empire floundered in rhetoric and ceremony, humanity operated with cold efficiency. There were no grand speeches, no theatrical marches, just action. Then came the final blow. Earth launched a coordinated cyber assault, not to disable the Empire's defenses, but to broadcast the full battle footage of Pluto, along with testimony from surrendered Imperial officers. Into every system still under Imperial control, worlds that once feared the Empire saw the truth. Their invincible fleets were fragile, their soldiers unwilling. Their enemy humanity was not a barbarian horde, but a species of surgical precision. That's when the defections turned into open revolt. Protests erupted across the Empire's capital. Riots consumed noble estates. On the moonworld of Zale, an entire legion turned its weapons on their own commanders. Chant, "No more masks," became the rallying cry against the Empire's hollow authority. Back on the resolute vow, Captain Hayes received one last transmission. It was from a junior Imperial officer, voice trembling. "Please, we didn't know. We thought the stories were just fear propaganda, but you meant it. You really never stopped laughing." Hayes paused before replying, "No, we just never needed to shout." By the end of the second week, the Empire's central command had collapsed. Catholics fled. The Empire had lost not just a war, but its myth. The fear it once inspired was gone, and across the galaxy, species finally exhaled. The war, as it turned out, didn't end with a battle. It ended with the truth. Part 5. Aftermath and echoes explained in 700 words. The Eternal Empire was gone, not in a slow, crumbling decline, but in an astonishing 2-week collapse that would echo through galactic history. Their fleets, once symbols of fear, had been turned into debris fields or surrendered outright. Their governors fled. Their nobles begged for amnesty. Their so-called emperor vanished into obscurity, and at the center of the collapse stood humanity, laughing no longer, but respected more than ever. When Earth first refused to kneel, it had seemed like madness. When they sent only 5 ships against 73, it looked like suicide. But when the dust settled and the galaxy saw what had actually happened, it wasn't madness. It was clarity. Humanity had seen the truth beneath the glittering armor and ceremonial titles. The Empire was an illusion, powerful only because others believed it was. Now that illusion had been shattered. But Earth didn't take the opportunity to conquer or dominate. Instead, they shocked the galaxy again by offering help. The first act of the Terran Assembly following the collapse of the Empire was a directive called Project Solace. It wasn't a military campaign. It was a rebuilding initiative. Human. Ships entered former Imperial systems not with soldiers, but with engineers, doctors, and translators. Where the Empire had extracted, Earth provided. Where it had ruled by fear, Earth offered cooperation and technology transfers in the former Imperial capital of Voltrak Prime. Now, a fractured husk of rebellion and confusion, Earth did the unthinkable. They held a free election. They didn't install a puppet government. Instead, they helped create a galactic civil restoration board, staffed with representatives from dozens of species who had lived under the Empire's boot for generations. And who led the board? Not a human, but a minor, soft-spoken diplomat from The long-overlooked Harwin species, once considered barely advanced enough to hold spaceflight. Their presence was enough. That quiet confidence spoke louder than any super weapon ever could, across alien media networks. Analysis of Earth's actions flooded every feed. Commentators debated endlessly how a relatively young species had toppled an ancient empire without launching a full-scale war. And again and again. They returned to the moment that started it. All the empires broadcast, demanding humanity kneel. The moment that Earth responded with nothing but a single word. No. That moment became legend. It was taught in classrooms, analyzed in military academies, and celebrated in art and song across liberated worlds. It's not because Earth had said no, but because they had meant it. They had backed it with unmatched discipline, preparation, and resolve. The laughter that had followed wasn't disrespected, was a sturdity of false power, pretending to be real. It was a laugh at a stage play, pretending to be a war, and the galaxy, once afraid to laugh, now found itself echoing. That same realization, some feared Earth's new status. Surely they must want something. No one tears down an empire just to leave. But those who visited Earth, or met with Terran leaders, found something unexpected. A people not driven by conquest, but by curiosity, by justice, by a fierce belief in earning respect, not demanding it. It was summed up by one of Earth's most quoted military officers, Commander Eli Jong, who was asked by a Galari journalist why Earth hadn't claimed the Empire's throne. His answer was simple: because we don't need thrones. We build bridges. Back on Earth, life returned to a strange normal. Memes still circulated. Footage of the Empire's envoy being dismissed with a single word was enshrined in museums and comedy clubs alike. But beyond the humor was a quiet pride. Humanity had proven something not just about themselves, but about fear itself. They showed the galaxy that laughter doesn't mean weakness, that mocking injustice and tyranny can be a weapon just as powerful as any plasma cannon. They showed that true strength isn't in the size of your fleet, but in your willingness to stand up and say no, even when everyone else is too scared to speak. And most of all, taught the stars a simple lesson: never mistake silence for submission. Never mistake a joke for a lack of resolve. Never ever mistake humanity's laughter for surrender. With that, the story concludes on a note of victory, not one of domination, but of transformation. Earth didn't just destroy an empire, they freed a galaxy.